We are now broadcasting to YouTube. Okay. So while everyone's logged in, maybe we can start by some introductions, and maybe if everyone can say what they're teaching. And we'll start with Judy. Judy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name's Judith Littlejohn, and I'm in Batavia, New York right now at Genesee Community College. I'm an instructional designer here, and I also teach history online as an adjunct.
Okay. We have camera switching a little bit there. I think it's probably the fan noise doing that. And if we could just go around the room. Would you like to start?
Hi, I'm Carla Senegal, and I teach in the art and design department.
Okay.
Hi Judith, I'm Jessica Harris. I teach in the Department of Public Promotion here at Sweden.
Okay.
I'm Karen Shockey, and I'm in the library.
I'm Susan Bai, a leading scholar in business school.
Okay. So if you could just grab a computer and log into Blackboard. And if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Linda Loomis in English.
Hello.
Okay, so now we'll jump over to the slide presentation we have, which is right. We will be using the new Google Hangouts question and answer tools. So if there's anyone online on YouTube, there's a URL at the top that you can sign in to ask questions, and we'll be notified of them, and then we can respond to them. You guys could do the same thing if you just want to play with it. It's a new feature that's only been active for about a week and a half or so now. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we could ask is why use rubrics? And there's
I think you skipped one there. The workshop goals.
oh, why is that? It's at slide 1. Why are we not seeing the workshop goals?
That I saw it there.
Okay, we've got a little technical problem.
Well, there's just briefly, the goals of this little session are to describe what a rubric is, and why you'd want to use one, identify the components of a rubric and the steps to developing one, and we'll show you how to construct one in Blackboard, and we can also share a few examples with you of rubrics that you could import into Blackboard, or and also other websites that give you more information about rubrics and different types that you can model.
And the slide really was there yesterday when we were working on this. So now the next question is, why use rubrics? And there's a lot of really good reasons for doing that. One is that it helps clarify expectations. If you've ever gotten assignments back from students that didn't quite match what you expected of them, it's probably because they didn't understand what you expected of them. And by using rubrics, it makes it clear to students exactly what they're expected to do, and it should reduce any confusion on their part, and it generally makes work a whole lot easier for you to evaluate if if students do what you hope they do. So telling them up front what you want to see in the work is probably useful. It also allows you to assess each student fairly and objectively. It's not uncommon for us to get tired while we're grading. Quite often that seems to make us particularly tired. And it's sometimes difficult to maintain the same standards. Sometimes as you're working through their work, you might get a little bit more frustrated and you might be a little harsher with grading, or you might start seeing just how badly they may be doing on something, and you might start upwardly revising that as you're grading. But the nice thing about using rubric is that you can assess each student fairly and objectively based on standards that you predefined, and that they know they're going to be evaluated on. It also allows you to provide consistent It allows you to provide consistent and precise feedback, which makes it easier for students to improve. This is especially important if you're going to be doing the same type of assignment repeatedly. So if you have a writing assignment, for example, that you're going to be doing several times a semester, if you have a series of writing assignments that you're going to have students do, if you're using a rubric for a discussion board, it's really nice for them to know exactly what you want and to give them feedback so the next time they do it, they can get better on those criteria. So it provides very clear and very precise feedback on what you expect from them, and they get to see how well they did according to the standards that you give them, and it makes it easier for them to learn and do better with that. It also allows you to share and use it across multiple sections of the course for assessment. So if, for example, you have multiple sections, if you're teaching a course where there's multiple sections of that in your department, you can use it to compare how students are doing so that you can see, for example, if we're trying to evaluate gen ed standards and you have multiple sections of an intro course, it's a nice, easy way of getting that feedback from all of your sessions, all of your sections in a way that is consistent across sections so that all the students are being, the progress towards those goals are being evaluated in the same way in each and every course, and the students know in advance typically how they're doing. Okay. And
I'm not sure we have the same slide deck, but there was another bullet point in there near the top that was, we use rubrics also to allow students to self-assess. As we said, if a student can see the rubric up front, then they know what's expected of them. They could also apply the rubric to their own work and make sure that they've covered everything the instructor is looking for. We also, a good way to utilize this is in peer review. If students are presented with a rubric they need to use to evaluate their peers' work, then they can turn the same rubric on their own work and hopefully learn from that.
Okay, now let's see, it looks like these slides are missing something. Let me go back and see if we can find which ones. Which ones should we be using?
The May 23rd ones.
May 20, this one probably.
I think it should be okay overall. Just maybe a couple things here and there might be missing, but we'll be okay.
Okay, well, let me switch over. Sorry, I gotta get back in there, and we'll change it to the right one because we missed some things that were revised. So we're going to switch over, and now I think I can get to the right ones. I believe this is there we go. Okay, so that explains why things were not looking like they were supposed to. And we're now going to go to, can you all see that? Okay, good. And why am I not seeing the presenter view? See now okay, what am I doing wrong? Oh, here we go. So we're going to do the presenter view. Okay. And let's move on. And there's the workshop goals. Okay. So now let's go back to the lesson. Okay. Now, Judy, I'll let you take over.
Where are we?
Are you not seeing this?
I'm seeing the title slide still. Using rubrics to provide transparent assessment of student work. The good news is it's the correct one, but it hasn't moved on from there.
Okay, I see the problem. Okay. This time it was going to go so smoothly, but we didn't really have a chance to practice this.
Well, why don't you put the goals up for a second? Or can you get it?
I know how to get it back. I was trying to make this easier, and it didn't quite work that way. Let me stop the screen share, and we will go back to a different type of screen share where we're sharing the entire screen, and now it should pop up. And this is, I believe, the correct one?
I think so.
Okay, and here we go. Can you see that now?
I do see that. Yeah,
Okay.
provide students with rubrics. Okay. So I think it's important. Okay. Are we settled on this?
Okay, I see what's happening. One more time. You know? Okay.
You're gonna have to double my fee,
I know.
says the volunteer.
I think we're okay now.
Yeah.
Are we on the right slide? Yes, we are. Okay. Go
All
ahead.
right. Provide students with rubrics. Okay, so back to the rubrics. I think that if students see the rubrics up front, they know what is expected of them, as we've been saying. I got to get back into this. So we're a Quality Matters school, and part of Quality Matters is that you have to make sure that the students know exactly how they're going to be evaluated. So rubrics is a key part of that. So I make sure that all the rubrics that I use are right in the syllabus. It makes for a long syllabus, but I think it's better to give them more information than not enough. So I put them at the end as an appendix. But I also put it right in my Blackboard menu, as you can see in the slide. So the students can go right to the rubrics and find the different ones that they need.
One of the things that I do also is, before they're going to have a rubric used for something, is to email it to them in my online classes in particular, so they can, because they don't always read all that information. So the main point is make sure they know what rubric you're going to be using before they do the first assignment you're using with it.
That's a great idea. I'm going to make a note of that.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
This is Karen from the library. And do they know what a rubric is when you email them and say, here's the rubric? Do they know what that is? Or do you explain it to them saying, these are all the criteria you're going to be graded on?
That's what I tell them. I said, these are the criteria going to be graded, and these are how many points each criteria is worth, and we'll see a rubric. So it's pretty reasonably self-explanatory, when they get it. But I do tell them that this is how their discussion post will be graded, or this is how their paper will be graded, so they know that in advance. Right.
It is important to make sure they understand. I'm in a community college, and some of the students don't know what a syllabus is. So we start, you have to take that approach, right? You assume they don't know any of this terminology, and every time you use it the first time, fully explain it, and hopefully they catch on, early on in the semester. But it is a good point to make sure everyone knows what a rubric is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so these are the rubrics that Judy uses in this class.
So this is just when you have your rubric set up in Blackboard, you can just do a snip of it to make a JPEG, or you can download it as a PDF and put it right in your syllabus. If you're going to add it to another document, you want to keep accessibility in mind, but you also want to get the information out there to the students. But we'll be able to see more of that as we get further into the session. And John, do you want to talk about the different things we can use rubrics for?
Sure. So in Blackboard, you can use rubrics for a wide variety of things. In fact, most graded things you can use it for. You can use them for discussion forums, so students know in advance what they're expected to do. One of the things I've often had a problem with students is with discussions online, they tend to post at the last possible minute. And since I require them to respond to at least a couple of posts of others, that makes it difficult for the 5 or 10% of students who would actually start the discussion when the discussion opened, because there was very little for them to respond to. So one of the things you can do, for example, is, include in the rubric something about the spacing of participation. So whatever is important to you and whatever you'd like to see students do more of, you can include it. And it's dramatically improved the quality of discussion. It's significantly improved the quality of discussions in my online classes just by having students start posting earlier. You can use it for any written assignment. So if you have students submitting papers, essays, or written work of any sort that's submitted through Blackboard, you can use rubrics for that. You can use it for blogs, wikis, and journals that are done through Blackboard. You can use it for group projects, and you can use it for peer and self-assessment. So you can even set it up so that students evaluate each other as well as themselves using the rubrics which are based in that. So you can have small groups where, well, you could do it for the whole class, or you could do it within groups where they evaluate each other and their own work. Judy, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure. We're talking about this under the umbrella of Blackboard because we're both Blackboard campuses. However, you can use a rubric outside of Blackboard too. When my students do peer reviews, we do them through Google Forms and Sheets. And so the rubric is broken out into survey type questions in Google Forms, so they use it that way. And I think if you're teaching a face-to-face class and you don't use Blackboard, that's okay. You can still use a rubric.
That's a good point. The rubrics can be used for anything. They don't have to be done in Blackboard. So now go to one of your courses, and Judy, if you'd like to work people through, I think almost everyone's logged into Blackboard. If not, try logging in, pick one of your courses, and Judy?
Sure, so if you're in a course, go down to the bottom left of your menu to the course tools, and sadly I'm not logged into one, but if you click on course tools, then you'll see the drop down list and go all the way down to rubrics. It's just called that. And click on that, you'll see your rubric menu. And you can create a rubric. You can import one. I don't know, can you guys see them? Are you logged in there?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing course. I went into tools. Oh, course tools.
Yep. So click on course tools on the left, and then choose rubric. And probably the easiest thing if you don't have rubric is you have to go into a course first. So
there it is.
There it is, yep. And then the easiest thing is just to click on create rubric. Okay.
So yeah, use a descriptive name that makes sense to you and the students. I typically just preface it with the name and, the like HIS 102 for History 102, so I know exactly which course it is, and then discussion or blog or whatever the purpose is. So it's easy for you to find and easy for the students to find.
Here it is, course tools.
Then the next slide shows more information about the rubric creation. You can move ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. So this kind of spells it out for you. You can use percent rubrics or point rubrics. I use percentages so that no matter how, if I transfer a rubric from one course to another, then it doesn't matter what the overall point value is. Each rubric used would be a percentage of the overall score.
So it
Does that
doesn't
make sense?
So it doesn't matter if it's a 10-point assignment, a 50-point assignment, a 5-point assignment, you can use the same rubric and the same criteria.
Right. And then I like to reorder it so that the highest points are in that first column the students see. So right away the students see the best thing you want them to do. You know what I mean? So instead of showing them the minimum, and if they don't read the whole thing, they're just going to see like, what do I have to do to just pass this thing and move on. I like to show them the best work that you expect of them to get the highest score and go down from there.
Psychologically, it's primary. So instead of showing them the minimum acceptable and what's unacceptable, start by showing them what you expect. You could call it proficient, which is the default name, but you could call it whatever you like. It could be that they've mastered the material and is approaching mastery. And you can have as many columns as you want. You can have as many levels. You probably don't want to go much past 4 or 5, just because it becomes a little more difficult grading and interpreting it. But basically, they start with defaults, and you can rename any of them. You could add new criteria, and you could add new levels within those. But just make sure that you adjust the percentages if you reverse the order, so that using the default titles, proficient should probably be 100%. Competent could be 50, it could be 70, it could be whatever you'd like. But adjust levels so that they're reasonable. I recently made a mistake on a rubric that I had just created, where I was using our Gen Ed rubric for our Gen Ed critical thinking rubric, where I used the categories from that, and I assigned 100% for exceeds level, and then I think I used 66% for meets level. And then I realized immediately after deploying that probably didn't make sense. You probably didn't want to give them 2/3 of the possible points for just meeting the level that they're expected to achieve. So I adjusted that fairly quickly, but it would have been a bit of a mess if I hadn't. So does anyone have any questions while you're looking at these? It might help to try adding another row or renaming the rows to whatever you got.
And you have to think it through too, though. I mean, so if somebody if somebody meets the level, then do they pass the assignment? So would you give them a failing grade or a passing grade? So you got to kind of think through, like, what would all this translate as? And you can add as many columns as you want. You don't necessarily have to use every column for every row. For example, when I give a final paper, one of the rows is if the paper is long enough, if they did those 7 pages, and they either did or they didn't. So they get 100% of that or 0. And I don't have to, so all those columns I'm not using across the middle are just 0. Does that make sense? So don't get hung up on the grid itself. Just look at each row and figure out what you need and make sure you have enough columns to address all of the situations that you've encountered or that you imagine the students will meet with their work. So you could have a column for failing or not attempting. You could have a D, if you will, type column if somebody took a stab at it but didn't really put much effort into it. A C would be like an average thing. B could be above average, and the A could be exemplary. And then figure out your percentages accordingly.
Exemplary could be 100% of that category score, meeting the expectations. It could be 90%, it could be 85%, whatever you think is appropriate for the criteria you defined. And they can be different, as Judy said, in each and every row. And some of them might be just binary. Right.
And so each row across has to total, however you distribute the percentages, it has to equal 100 going across.
Or going down.
And when you're, yeah.
Right.
And then your main column on the left, the darker column with the weights, that has to total 100 at the end. So if you had three rows, you'd have one would be 33, 33, 34, so that you get 100, or however you want to apportion out the percentages.
And some things may be more or less important to you, so you could assign some to be 50% and others to be 5% or 10%. However,
right.
Oh, I see.
So basically, you determine how much of each credit you get with the numbers as you go across the row. The leftmost column tells you how important that criteria is in the overall grade. And it automatically will allocate the points based on that.
Well,
One thing to know ahead of time is as you're adjusting these percentages, you get a lot of error messages in Blackboard. A lot of pop-ups will say total must equal 100, and just X those out and keep going. It's just sort of a reminder that gets a little annoying if you're working through a large rubric, but it just tries to keep you on track to make sure you keep 100 in mind. But it's not, you can't save and deploy a rubric if all the math doesn't work out right, but so those little error messages are just kind of keeping you on track that way. Don't let them stop you.
Those are the numbers in the leftmost column.
Okay.
And your highest score should all be 100 in each row. So they get full credit for that category.
We have a couple rubrics here to share with you, so you can take a look at a couple different types.
Right. So has everyone at least created a rubric and seen how you can do it? Any questions? And this should be an iterative process. The first time you use it, it might give you scores that are higher or lower than you would like if you haven't used them before. So the next time you do it, it could be that semester, it could be the next semester, you can adjust it so that it gives you the scores that you otherwise would have given. It just makes it a little more clear to everybody what you expect of students. And it does require you to do some thinking of what you really want or what you value. Okay, we're on the next slide.
Yes, so this just shows you how to deploy the rubrics in Blackboard. You can, when you're setting up your assignment or discussion post, when you get into the part where you're putting in the settings, you choose the add group, once you say that something will be graded, so say it's a discussion post, you click the box that says it will be graded, and then you click on the add rubric drop down, and that will show you all the rubrics that you have in your course, and you can select the appropriate one.
And so probably a good thing is if you could save that rubric, as long as the leftmost weights that up to 100, and just go in and maybe create a discussion forum or discuss an assignment, whatever you'd like, but do something that would be graded. You don't have to have anything in it, but just try how, make sure it's given a name and submit to save the rubric. And then it's probably best to actually try this.
When you associate a rubric to a graded assignment, you'll see that once the rubric is pulled in, it does not show to the students. There's an indicator on the right that shows they cannot see it. So you have to go over to the right and click the drop down and choose yes so that the students can see the rubric. I don't know why they can't see it, but that's how the default is.
It's unfortunate because you generally default to them seeing it. So probably the easiest thing to do is create, if you don't have a folder in your course, create one and then just go in and choose add assignment from the list within the folder. So go to your content menu. Okay. And then if you have a course, you can, as long as it's not something active, if it's active, create a new one.
It's a sandbox.
Okay, so as long as it's a sandbox, just go in and choose assessment on the top under the content menu.
Gotcha.
And choose assignment. That's probably the simplest one to create. Okay, and just give it a name.
Okay.
So go on to assessment and click add assignment. So is that one saved? Yeah, click submit to save it. And maybe do something wrong. Okay, one cell must equal 100. Oh, one of the categories has to be worth 100 points. So in the scores, you have percentage. You have to put in the actual percentages. One of them has to be 100%. They have to, at least one of them has to be 100% in each row. Sorry. So just type in 100 in each row. It doesn't, for now, you're not going to be using it. Click OK first. and then go down and put in 100% for proficient. And just do that for each row, and then you can save it. Okay, so now for those who are in there, once you started that assignment, scroll all the way down to where you see grading, and click on the Add Rubric option, and choose Select Rubric. So go to an assignment you create and choose Select Rubric. So is this a live course or?
Yeah, creating.
Okay, so yeah, just go in and create, go into the, okay, have you created?
Yeah, I have it not in here, but I can import that.
Okay, yeah, so import it, right, you can import it from another, we'll go over that in just a minute.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
How are we doing?
We're mostly there. There's a little problem with, okay, so here, don't import a rubric, click cancel. Go to, okay, so you have the rubric. Go to content, right there, and choose assessment, and then just choose assignment. That's a nice, quick, easy thing. You'd use this if you had students submit a paper or an essay or something similar. And then you can just give it a name, and it doesn't really matter what the name is. You can call it junk or test or something. And then just scroll down to where you see grading, and right there is a rubric, and click on Add Rubric. And if you click on Select Rubric, it will pop up with a list of rubrics, and just choose it. That's it. And then click Submit. And then when you see it, you notice all the way over to the right, it says Show Rubric to Students. It defaults to No. Click on that and change it to Yes.
No, if you go to, where's tools?
We're almost there, Judy.
I just opened it. Import it.
Okay. And there you have a rubric. Okay. Oh, no. Yeah, you have a rubric. So go over to content. Right in content. Just choose Add Assessment under Assessment. And then choose Assignment. And then you can delete this one later. Well, it defaults to not being visible at all. Just throw a name in.
So we put a new rubric?
Well, yeah, just this is the name of the course, though. This is the name of the assignment. So just type anything for the name of the assignment, something that you'll remember you're not actually using. And then scroll down. And then scroll down a bit. Okay, then scroll down until you see the grading part of this. Scroll down. And then you'll see under the grading, click on Add Rubric. Right there. And then select rubric. And then click on the checkbox. Yeah, that just lets you see it. Click on this one. Well, but just to show how it works. So click on the checkbox right there, and then click on the then click submit, and then scroll down with the rubric. Click on the box to make it visible to students. Because the rubric is only going to be useful if students can actually use the feedback. So the best thing to do is to show yes, and also with the rubric score. Okay, so does everyone see how to add the rubric to that now? Okay, we'll move on to the next slide then.
Okay. So this screen shows you what it looks like when you're grading an assignment that had the rubric attached to it. All right, so as the instructor, you would go in, and if you use Safe Assign, if you're accustomed to Safe Assign, this is right below Safe Assign. You click in the space in the grade book, and you'll see discussion rubric, and you would click on it and have it show you the descriptions. And then you would just go through each criterion and select the choice that is appropriate for the assignment the student has submitted. So it's helpful. And there's also the feedback box for each criterion. And then you have, again, at the end, you're able to give overall feedback to the student too.
Yeah, so for each of the rows, you can add feedback if you choose. You can also add it for overall on the rubric page. And then once you're done and you click, is it save, I believe, or submit?
Yeah, save rubric. It's at down, if you know, way down at the very bottom, it says save rubric score. So you just save it. And then the second step is to give them any overall feedback that you want and submit the grade score.
Okay, so at the very end, so basically you're given 3 places where you can give students feedback. Well,
right.
One for each criteria, one for each row of the rubric. Again, you don't have to do this, I tend not to, but unless there's something really dramatic that they need specific feedback on, then you can do the rubric as a whole. And then once you submit the rubric, the score will show up in the typical grade box in Blackboard, along with the other feedback box. And that's where I more often do it, just in case they don't open the rubric. But you can do it in many places, but there's a number of clicks. So you have to save the rubric, you go to the grade thing, and it doesn't actually save anything unless you click submit on that next page.
Right. The next image is just a picture back to when you were creating the rubric. Just to reiterate that if you find, you know, if you've been giving specific assignments over and over again and you find that you're giving the same feedback, you can write some of that right into your rubric. So when you choose that, you know, when you make that choice for the student and they read what you selected, that's the feedback built right in there. So that can be helpful too.
So yeah, default feedback would be really good if you say the same thing over.
Mm-hmm.
And this illustrates what Judy was talking about before with how she puts the highest quality or the highest category first. This happens to be a point-based one, but so the best score is shown first to prime students. This is what you'd really like to see from them. And then you go downhill rather than gradually building up to that. So it puts up front what you'd like to see as a level of the work, and then you go down to other possible levels. And you know, psychologically that may help, or at least that's what a lot of people believe, and I think it makes some sense. Okay.
So the next one shows you how the rubric totals out, and then it gives you your raw total, and you can always override that too if you want. If so, say if you have very few columns, very few rows, so that you're sort of giving them a 0, a 33, a 66, or 100. That's probably not the score that you really want to give them, but something in a range. And you can narrow it down and choose what you want out of the range and provide more specific feedback before you finally submit the grade. So you may run into that. I have to use a couple of history department rubrics that I can't modify, and they're sort of in a range like that, kind of all or nothing rubrics. And generally, you know, few people get 100 and most people don't really get the 60. You want to give them something in between, but you have to sort of justify it or clarify why you changed the rubric score. So it's helpful, I think, to be able to make adjustments.
So if someone did exceptionally well in something but the rubric score comes out low, you can bump it up that way and just provide an explanation of why they're getting more than the rubric suggests. But it's still giving feedback that they could build up to better performance in some areas. So it's still useful, even that.
The next,
okay.
Sorry.
Move on.
The next picture is just a little closer. So the sentence, please contribute more, that's what you could type right in the grade center after the rubric's done. And the sentence underneath where it says write more sentences, that was what was written on the rubric, just so you can see that wherever you're writing feedback, it's all pulled into where the student sees their grade.
So they see it all together regardless of whether you did it on the individual, in the rubric, or in the final summary.
Right. So it's more helpful if the student really reads the rubric to see all those descriptions. But if they don't, if they just go in and look at their grade, at least they see all the specific feedback that you write.
Any questions on it? Or?
So when they go to see their grade, the rubric pops up?
The rubric they have to click on. So they won't actually see the boxes unless they choose to open the rubric to do it.
Right, the next image is what the students see, if you want to advance one.
Judy was ready for that. So they have to actively click on this view rubric thing in order to see it, but it's there. Otherwise, they just see what was on the previous screen. And then if they click on view rubric, they'll see the whole thing with the choices highlighted and checked. Right. So they can clearly see what ones you selected if they click on view rubric. If they choose not to click on view rubric, at least they're going to see the feedback that you wrote. And that would be a good case for putting default comments in there too. So you don't have to put notes for them to see that.
Okay, so this is just how you would export your rubric. I could hear somebody in there saying you have a rubric in another course and you can export it out. So you have to go to the location where you have the rubric, go back into the course menu to course tools and choose rubrics. And then up at the top of the page, above the list of all the rubrics, is the export function. So you would check the box next to the rubric that you want and then choose export. And you can save it. It puts it in a folder on your local computer. It's like a zipped file, and then you can import it into something else.
This is also a good way of sharing rubrics with your colleagues. So if you have a rubric and they want to try using it, you could just download it, put it in Google Drive, and share it to anyone else who wants to use it, or email it to them.
Right, so we have a couple in Google Drive that we're going to share with you guys, and this is exactly how we got those out. So you'll see those after. So another thing we do on our campus, and I don't believe you guys do it there, is we use the goals function in Blackboard. We put our course student learning outcomes in Blackboard as goals. And then with that, we are able to add alignments to our assessments. And so our rubrics reinforce the alignment. So if you're doing gen ed assessment, we can put in the gen ed criteria and attach the rubric to it. So it's all pretty seamless. If we try to pull data out of Blackboard, we can see exactly what gen ed was being assessed and exactly what the criterion was and how the students did.
Judy gave a very nice workshop here last year, which is recorded. You can see that on how to do this or how they're using it. It would make so much sense if we could do that here for our gen ed assessment in particular, but also for any department learning objectives. And it's quite a bit of work to set it up. But once it
is a lot of work. And it works better in theory than in practice. It's still a lot of work to get that data out of Blackboard, but as an instructor, it's great to be able to go into your course and see that all of your learning outcomes are being assessed and that everything is being assessed by a rubric. So it's all, literally transparent assessment of student work.
So it's easier for instructors to collect information and share it with the people who are evaluating things for gen ed.
Mm-hmm. So we also put in our institutional student learning outcomes too. So if you're teaching a course, like the history courses obviously have their own course student learning outcomes, but then they also support our critical thinking institutional learning outcomes. So I can mark in my course where the students are being assessed on critical thinking. So that's helpful too for institutional data.
And here's a list of resources with some sample rubrics and so forth. But what's probably easiest if we just jump to the next thing, and this is where it is. Oh, it looks like it wrapped since we last did this. We have a list of resources on the short URL, or if you have a QR scanner, you should be able to get to it right from there. It's in Google Drive, and you can just go there and download some sample rubrics and play with them and look at the other resources that we have there. Now I'm going to stop sharing. Well, I'll leave that up for just a moment. And any questions? We've gone through quite a bit here. And the nice thing is, right at 11 o'clock, we have another session in this room on creating rubrics. So if you'd like to stay and work with it a bit more, Kristen Flint will be giving that and assisting people as they do that.
And do look at the resources, because there are a ton of rubrics already out there. So depending on what sort of work you're trying to evaluate, say, a video that students create, or creative writing, or whatever else, beyond the traditional discussion and essay, research paper type rubric. There's a lot out there.
And
I think that we did share a blog rubric that I use, and a pretty comprehensive discussion rubric that takes into account how many students people comment on and how many times a week that they log in and post comments. That I think is pretty helpful.
Okay, so now let's jump back and hop back into here. Okay, now we can see you again.
Hi.
So we have one viewer. Let's make sure the question and answer thing is set up. That got messed up a bit before. But if anyone has any questions, whoever's online and watching, if you have any questions, you can type them in now. We have a Q&A thing set up. And any question from people here?
The one viewer may be me, because I have it on.
Oh, but if you have any questions, type them in and we'll answer them.
Yeah, so is there anything you expected to hear from this workshop that you're not hearing, or any information you still need? Are we good?
Yeah, so.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you all for coming in, and I hope you stay around and work with Kristen and get some rubrics going.
Thank you. Thank you.
And have a great summer.
Thanks. Hey, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Judy.
Yep. Take care.
Thanks. Okay, we'll stop the broadcast.